Hey guys, Bitter here to tell you about the latest from Allegaeon, Damnum, out February 25th on Metal Blade Records. The album has 12 tracks, 60 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. They are an American progressive, technical, melodic death metal band. On this record, they turned a 60-minute album into a 30-minute experience. This is a sign of a great design, great structure, and outstanding soundscape. Without these three elements working together, the record doesn't have that feel. The 60 minutes perhaps feel even longer. So this album is designed in the best way possible in order for the listener to assimilate everything that the record has and feel like you just didn't get enough of it. Now the album is very fluid, is very volatile, chaotic at times, super dynamic with incredible ebbs and flows from song to song, but even within the songs themselves. So at first glance you would think, wow, this much volatility, this much chaos across 60 minutes, it's really going to spread out and make the overall experience very difficult for the listener. It's not the case. The album is super engaging. It has key point indicators, vocally and musically, throughout the entire record that you can connect the dots and see exactly what picture is painted at the end. This is fundamental in order for the record to have that 30-minute playability across 60-minute length. Once you move into the sound is big, but at the same time very well defined. It's robust, it's texture, it has layers. There's a lot to digest, there's a lot to process, but it's not hard to digest and it's not hard to process. It's actually really easy. The experience of this album is really simplified for the listener. You just kind of have to navigate through and take what you can and then come back for more and then take different elements the second time around, and it's an experience that grows with every time you listen to this record. You're able to assimilate the overall big picture really easy because the sound has clarity, the sound feels powerful, but it still doesn't murky the waters. It doesn't become edgy or rugged around the edges. It's very well shaped, very well defined from that perspective. And then at the same time, you can really break down all the different elements that make that incredible sound, that robust experience, either be the bass, the guitars, the drums, the vocals, or any other elements that they decided to add on into the overall soundscape of this record. So it's an album that you can take two different approaches to it. You can enjoy the overall experience that it gives you, or if you want to get a little bit more technical and you want to get a little bit deeper into what made that sound tick and what made that sound be the way it is, then you can really break down what every single instrument is doing and the impact that they have in that overall design. So it's a really outstanding record from that perspective. Now, as far as the key indicators that I mentioned below that connect the dots throughout this entire record that allow you to paint a picture at the end, I really feel they're there musically and vocally. Musically, perhaps the acoustic guitars, the keyboards, the pianos, those two elements are really sprinkled well throughout the entire album. They always feel fresh every time they come to the forefront, but they also give you a sense of been heard before, something that you can connect with the past, with the previous track, and that is really what's going to help you move along throughout these 60 minutes, throughout these 12 songs. Same thing could be said about the vocals. The dynamic approach that the vocals have match a lot of the mobility of sound. So that's also another key indicator that you can hold on to and see the connections between these songs while still keeping the diversity of sound and the diversity of each song alive and well throughout all 12 tracks. Now, the elements that drive this record really have a deep impact. There's not one that has a deeper impact than the other. When you look at the drums, for example, the drums have great sound all around. Very consistent in giving power and giving heaviness and creating a little bit, not just of the foundation of the tracks, but actually a little bit of the skeleton of what the songs are all about. A lot of the intensity that these songs have, a lot of the brutality and aggression, they're always kick-started by what's happening with the drums, song in and song out. The bass lines are phenomenal, super groovy, and I love the fact that they allow the bass to pop as much as possible throughout the entire record. And that becomes one of the key indicators that you're going to find. You're going to feel like you've heard it before, but it's not quite the same, but it has a very similar impact and has a very similar desire in terms of what it wanted to give and in terms of what you're going to get from it. So I really enjoyed the grooviness of the bass, the impact that it had, and how layered it was with everything that was happening. Really connecting the dots between the drums and guitars, making the sound feel more together, having a little bit more substance to it, and adding a very interesting flavor and fragrance to the overall experience. Now, the guitars are very interesting because you have two different sides here, and you're going to see the same mobility, the same chaos, the same controlled chaos on the vocals as you do on the guitars. Those two elements are working in parallel, if you will, but on two different platforms. As far as the guitars goes, the acoustic side is outstanding. I really enjoyed it. I love the fact that it wasn't overused, or at least it didn't feel to me that it was overused, because it was sprinkled in at the right times and the right songs with the right gaps in between them, in order for you to feel like it was a fresh experience all over again, but at the same time giving you a sense of comfort because you did hear it before. Now, on the other side, you have the technical approach, the melodic approach, and it's phenomenal. The guitar playing on this record is phenomenal all around, regardless of acoustic or not acoustic, but it's just phenomenal. The technical approach, it's really important because it really separates, it creates a huge divide between that acoustic sound, that more natural, that more organic sound, and then the more traditional, well-crafted death metal technical approach, progressive approach that they want to have on this record. The two balance off of one another. And the melodic drive that this record has is also outstanding. It creates a sense of layers between what the guitars are doing. They're not always being technical, they're not always being progressive. You have melodic in the middle that just kind of weaves itself with those other two on the outside, allowing the sound to have that sense of thickness to it, to have that sense of layering that just has a lot to give, and it's not going to give everything that it has at first glance. Now, once you move into the vocals, you're going to see a very similar approach as what you saw from the guitars. You have the clean vocals, you have the harsh vocals, you have an incredible range of everything from one to the other, almost spoken word at times, going really deep, feeling like it's almost like the deepness of the soul coming onto the outside, and then pushing it really high with some important screams that allow the songs to have a little bit more extension, that allows the songs to have a little bit more room to breathe. I love the vocal performance on this record because once again it matches the same dynamic approach that we see on the album musically. So you have these two elements creating a lot of volatility, and then you have other elements that are kind of grounding the experience and connecting it throughout all 12 songs. Overall, this is an incredible sounding and an incredible design and constructed record. Super dynamic, super volatile, very engaging, very entertaining, both musically and vocally. A lot of great qualities from this album. It's really hard to find something that is not in the right place, or it doesn't really work, or that it hurts the overall playability or fluidity of the album. This is a nearly flawless record from start to finish. I honestly didn't think this album was going to be as good as it is, especially when you consider 60 minutes. These days, a 60-minute record is something hard to get a listener engaged and connected with. This album, once again, feels like a 30-minute experience. As far as favorite songs, I want to start off with Bastards of the Earth. Acoustic opening, I love this track. This is how you start off the album with this acoustic opening. Becomes a super driven song with aggression and heaviness both musically and vocally, but still very dynamic, very volatile, with a lot of life in it. The melody is interlaced within everything that you're experiencing. The guitars on this track have a lot of power, and they really dictate exactly where you're going with the song and how you're going to get to where you need to go. Really interesting approach from that perspective. They really have an outstanding sound, and they control everything that this track has to offer. The solo section is phenomenal because it adds power, it adds melody, it just adds technicality to the song. It makes the song feel even bigger, even larger. It has such an incredible highlight, and adding to everything that you were already getting up to this point guitar-wise, this definitely becomes a very guitar-driven song where they are the absolute highlight of the track. Next you have Called Home, another track that opens up with acoustic guitars, but these two are very far apart from each other. So when Called Home opens up with the acoustic guitars, you feel like you've heard it before, but it doesn't sound repetitive. This is really the winning formula that this album showcases song in and song out. Now, that acoustic guitar opens up, you got clean vocals on top of it, creating a very dark and sad atmosphere. Now, the doors crack open, and from sadness you go into pure aggression and intensity, both musically and vocally. Great bass tone throughout this entire song. When it pops, it really pops, and it helps define exactly how this track feels and the substance that it has. Demolishing drums almost from start, because you don't have them right at the opening, but almost from start to finish. It also has a very melodic drive. It's constantly shifting. It's a song that doesn't stay in the pocket. It moves musically and vocally. There's incredible ebbs and flows throughout the entire song, giving it a lot of energy and giving it a lot of movement. There's a melancholic bridge on this track that gives you vocals and piano, predominantly vocals and piano, and it's absolutely memorable. You get into that portion of the track, you feel like you're sitting down with your most deep and sad inner thoughts, and that's how you progress through it. It becomes really dark, but a different kind of darkness. And then as you start to weave out of it, as you start to move out of it, you start to feel like the song is becoming more of a hybrid. It's becoming a little bit of what we saw before that bridge, and then what that bridge added to the overall atmosphere of the track. The two start to combine as one, and the song becomes a lot more textured, a lot more layered, finishing with a lot of power, with a lot of strength. Last but not least, Only Lost. This is the last track on the album. Great vocal range. If there's one thing you're going to take from this song, is how incredible the vocal range is from start all the way to the finish. I really feel like this is a track that is perhaps a little bit of a synopsis of everything that you've experienced on this album, both musically and vocally. Everything that you saw from the first all the way to the last song, this last track really encapsulates it well. It really paints that picture for you and allows you to feel like a sense of closure, a sense of finality. This track definitely has all of those elements, and it's a beautiful track to finish the album with because it has a lot to offer. It has that mobility, it has that volatility, very dynamic, controlled chaos, both musically and vocally, but outstanding vocal performance. That's perhaps one of the calling cards of Only Lost, is how incredible the vocals are throughout the entire experience of listening to this song. This is it. Allegaeon with Damnum out February 25th on Metal Blade Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.